ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Silverways Media Podcast. I'm Jake Stambro, and I'm very excited to bring you our first episode on the men's side today with Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl. Sully Carter kicked off our women's side with Oregon head coach Kelly Graves a couple weeks ago. So excited to continue to bring this from a week-to-week, month-to-month thing for you guys to ultimately gain insight from different basketball figures all over the world. We just made a new acquisition at Silverways Media with Coach Book Richardson. Coach Book will be doing a lot of the podcast moving forward, and looking forward to really, diving into his knowledge, his experience, as well as his trials and tribulations that he's had recently that, he's so gracious to share with us. So I'm excited about that moving forward. As far as today's podcast, I've been fortunate to spend some time with Coach Bruce Pearl down at Auburn. I was there when he was kind of first getting there and developing the culture, and he had such great energy. I knew it was going to take off, and has recruited very well, and just went to his first Final Four at Auburn a couple years ago, and has had great success in Southern Indiana, where he got his coaching start in Division II, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Tennessee, and now obviously at Auburn. So we talk about his development of the culture there, his team next year with Sharif Cooper and some of the guys he's recruited, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement, COVID and some other things. So without further ado, I'm very excited to have Coach Bruce Pearl, and welcome him to the Silverways Media Podcast. We are pleased and thankful to be joined by Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl today on the Silverways Media Podcast. Coach, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jake. How are you doing?
Good. Living the COVID dream.
It is. It's everybody talk about whether the new normal. This is obviously something that we got to live with, and everybody's trying to do the best they can and try to adjust to a very contagious disease that hopefully, when it's all said and done, won't be as deadly as it perhaps could have been, or we feared it would be. But there's just still so much we don't know. And I think everybody is doing the best they can to navigate through this thing, to keep people safe, and yet try and, have us be able to go back to school and people be able to be at work and have our society be able to function. And certainly, basketball is our life, and it's a part of it.
Sure. No. So, Coach, let's start off here. One of the things that we've been covering for Silverways Media is recognizing coaches at the lower levels. Obviously, I know that you got your head coaching start in Division II basketball at Southern Indiana. Would you do that over again today if you were a Division I assistant? Do you think that there's like a best practice for choosing the right spots in order to ultimately, move your way up the ranks? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Look, don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Coaching, ministering, the game is the same, and do the best you can with what you have. There's no magic formula to what you're going to try to do, but don't disrespect Division II or Division III or junior college or high school basketball, or even AAU basketball. Just don't, because you've got to be successful. You've got to play hard, play together. You've got to win enough, no matter what level that you're at. And I remember being an assistant at the University of Iowa, and Tom Davis was my mentor. And if you're any good at anything, you had a great teacher, and I had a great teacher in Dr. Tom. He played his college basketball at Division III Wisconsin, Platteville. Well, that was where Bo Ryan also some years later coached. And so Tom and Bo were friends, and so therefore we sort of became part of the same basketball family. And I remember when I was a young assistant, Bo Ryan had told us, "Hey, listen, I cut my teeth in Division III. I learned how to coach at this level. It's pretty good. Don't think you got to go be a Division I head coach the first place you go to." And so I wasn't afraid of going to Southern Indiana. I loved it there. I learned a lot. We had success there, and obviously we were able to build our career from there.
So Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Tennessee, and now Auburn. You've done a great job at reigniting programs that, basketball either hadn't been relevant, been dormant, or a combination of the two. What's your recipe for success on that? What were the steps that you took right out of the gate to turn those programs around and lay the foundation? And, it seems like you've always had such an energy within yourself that matriculates into your players, from my point of view. But what's your take?
Thank you, Jake. I just think being bought in and being all in. I guess it goes back to what I was saying before. Treat every job like it's going to be your last. Every season like it's going to be your last. Every student athlete that you're coaching like your last. In the sense that so often we're someplace and we got our, we're at a party and our eyes are always wandering around to the next person we want to talk to instead of talking to the person that you're talking to. There's somebody bigger and better in the room. Don't treat your job like that. Move in. Bye. And then when it's time to leave, let there be tears because you built relationships with friends and family and the community, and let it be the hardest thing you've had to do by having to pick up your family and maybe move someplace else because the opportunity presented itself. And I think, in coaching, when we're winning, they're worried we're going to leave, and when we're losing, they're packing our bags. So we're always coming or going. Coaches aren't bought and sold. We're kind of leased. We have these 5-year leases or a 3-year lease. And sometimes when you lease property, you don't take care of it when you buy that property. All of a sudden your grass is greener or there are no weeds and you're planting flowers. And I just encourage coaches to buy and commit, and then let God and other circumstances kind of decide what's going to happen from there.
No, definitely. And another part of that is players. You've always had the reputation of being a great recruiter. The G League has just recently announced their development team, and the transfer market seems to be forever changing. Do you like the way the rules are right now? How have you changed with those rules? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and I'll go with your question kind of led me to finishing up the answer for the last one. And it is, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. What do you know? What can you teach? And I've always been a system coach. I go back to Dr. Tom Davis. That's where I got my foundation. And we don't play like everybody else. We've always spread it. We've always shot it. We've always believed in the three. We've always played fast. Coach Jim Calhoun said, look, you can only be great at so many things. So what do you want to be great at? Pick those things out. Try to be great at those things. Hide the rest of it. And it's just a system. And so we plug it in with different players, year after year. I think as far as the recruiting is concerned, I had 2 McDonald's All-Americans at Tennessee. Tobias Harris.
With the 19th pick in the 2011 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Bobcats select Tobias Harris from the University of Tennessee.
Tobias Harris and Scotty Hobson.
And Hobson, here's Chisholm. Hobson driving, steps back, lets it go.
I haven't had any yet at Auburn. My first one will be this year with Sharif Cooper. And so we didn't build it with the best players. We built it with really good players. But guys that had a chip on their shoulder, guys that wanted to get better, guys that understood that when we are successful, you as an individual will benefit far more than if you as an individual are successful but the team fails. And so playing hard, playing together, playing unselfishly, are you making the other guys out there better defensively by you being out there because of your ability to communicate or rotate or talk or stop your man and not require a lot of help? Or, are you a guy that'll, take a bad shot at the expense of moving the ball? Or, are you, selfish? And so just stay within the framework of what's the identity. How good's your locker room? What's the culture like? Sometimes take a little less talent and focus a little bit more, on culture. Then as far as the G League is concerned, look, this is a great country. And I think that it's awesome that kids coming out of high school are going to be able to get paid right away. If that's the best road that they and their family feel, like for them to take, that's fine. I could tell you the NBA right now is the scouts aren't necessarily loving it because they've got to make good decisions. Boy, they would really rather watch Isaac Okoro at Auburn, kind of grow and develop. And what is he like in overtime? What is he like on the road? You're going to watch these guys in the G League and they're going to be in workouts and training situations and sometimes playing against older players. And look, as long as they get drafted, where they want to get drafted, but I don't know what it's going to, do to their development. I'm kind of big, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I don't think there was anything wrong with the one and dones. I think everybody kind of yelled and complained and whined about it, and we lost it. Instead of those kids going to college for a year and developing, some really much better habits to transition from high school, they're much more ready for the NBA. And guess what? The NBA is not a great product right now in some ways because there aren't a lot of great players, and it does take a couple years for those young rookies to fit in. And when I say the NBA is not a great product, if we could send them a better product, it would be a better product. I think the differences between the veterans and the new players, sometimes that gap is too great. And I don't know if this will help it.
Well, I know that, there's some other rules that, kind of shifting gears that, as a country that we're facing. I know you've been very vocal about the problems in the Middle East as far as, human rights go in the past. And obviously we're going through a lot of changes with COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement. How has it affected you and what has been, you and your players' response to it all?
Jake, I get asked that question a lot. And the reality is it really hasn't affected us because we've been living in that world our entire lives, in the sense that as a coach, with the vast majority of my student athletes and staff being Black or African American, we've been having these conversations and dealing with these issues every day. It took seeing what happened on that bridge in Selma, Alabama, for the Civil Rights Voting Act to actually pass. When the world and the country saw the violence and were appalled by it, change took place. And obviously we saw the same thing with George Floyd. Now what we got to do is take advantage of what we've seen and recognize, we're not there yet. There is still profiling. There are still inequalities in employment and education. I am a very supporter of a great supporter of the men in blue. There's a lot of responsibility on those guys. They put themselves on the line in difficult situations. I don't think they should be defunded. I think they should be paid more, but they should be trained better and they should be held accountable when they step out of line and they themselves break the law. We need to recognize that there is some systemic injustice and inequality there as it relates to the treatment of African American men. But look, we are, I could say this as a Jewish American that was born in 1960, 15 years after the gates closed. I had relatives that survived the Holocaust. They had tattoos in their arm. I had relatives that died simply because of the way they prayed. I can tell you that my grandfather had it a lot worse than my dad did, and I got it a lot better than my dad had it. My son's got it better than I had it. I think we can say the same as it relates to race relations. It is better. We've come a ways. We still got a ways to go.
No, I agree with you, Coach. Totally agree. Give us a kind of another shift of gears here. You lose all 5 starters from last year's team. What can we expect from a new look Auburn Tiger roster that will feature 5 incoming freshmen and no seniors? First time in your career that a young roster like that?
It's the youngest I've ever had by a long shot, and probably going into a league that's as good as the SEC's ever been, top to bottom. I mean, it's going to be a monster league, and we had the best recruiting class in Auburn's history, but there were 4 or 5 classes in our league that had better years than we did. I think there were like 5. I think there were 7 of the top 10 recruiting classes or something like that. 7 of the top 12 in the SEC. I like my roster, like my kids. They're working hard. We're going to miss due to the COVID, we've been restricted as to what we can do with them. They're in a voluntary state right now of strength and conditioning. They're benefiting greatly by the strength and the conditioning, but we would have been able to work with them 8 hours a week, 4 on the court. We've lost that so far. We get it back July 20th. I certainly would have benefited, greatly by having June and July to work. But that said, the rules are the same for everybody. We're going to be, we'll be fast. We'll be quick. By virtue of being young, we won't be very strong, but we better be tough enough because we're going to get hit in the mouth. And how we respond to it without a lot of experience is going to be the great challenge. I like my team, though.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, your coaching tree is starting to take off with Todd Golden, Steve Forbes, Jason Shea, and even Stan Gerard, who's now the coach at your former school, Southern Indiana, and his alma mater. Your list of NBA draft picks, Tobias Harris, Jordan McRae, Chuma Keek, and others that you've got on NBA draft boards this year gets stronger. And you've won at a high level everywhere you've been. It goes to show how well of a job you've done in your near 40-year career. What are your thoughts on this? You just turned 60 years old. You seem like you have a lot of unfinished business, a lot of energy left in the tank. You've even had some Bachelor television publicity. What's next?
Well, listen, the tree goes back further than me. Go back to Tom Davis. Go back to Tom Young before Tom. Great. And all Tom Davis. So it's great to be obviously be a part of that. I'm so proud of Todd out there on the West Coast. One of the brightest young minds in all of college basketball. Jason Shea, Steve Forbes. Steve's done a wonderful job. Jason getting the opportunity now at East Tennessee State. Stan Gerard, he was one of the best players I ever coached, and he's done nothing but win at the Division II level. He will go to Southern Indiana, my old school, and he'll do well there. He is a steal at a mid-major, a high mid-major for his next position. So, look, credibility, consistency, accountability, discipline, graduating kids, making an impact in the community. I think my biggest thing as I've gotten older, Jake, is understand that coaching is as much a ministry as it is anything else. We've graduated 29 players at Auburn in the last 6 years, the most in the SEC. So graduating kids, having a perfect APR, the academic performance rating, 4 straight years of perfect. 10% of all the Power 5 conference men's basketball programs have perfect in a year. 10%, 90% don't. We've had perfect 4 straight years. You can't tell me that the discipline of competing in the classroom hasn't had something to do with the discipline, with the way you need to play on the floor, the way you need to train and take care of yourself. So I just want to see if we can keep it going, add to the history. And, when I think about the fact that there have only been 7 programs that have won 25 games in the last 3 seasons consecutively, I don't even know. It's like, what it is. It's Duke and Gonzaga and, Kentucky. And, oh, by the way, it's Auburn too. I'm just honored to be in a position where we can put our name on that list.
For sure. Coach, one last question before we let you go. There's a lot of people watching that would love some advice from you. What would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know today, all the things you've accomplished, very decorated career, obviously. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
And I don't know. The question leads you to, smell the coffee while you're there. But I tried to. Your greatest accomplishments are what they are because the friends and the family that you celebrated with, marriage, birth of a child, a graduation, winning championships. It's so meaningful because of the people that you do them with. Players don't care how much you know, so they know how much you care. Keep on loving your players. I think I've tried to do that better as I've gotten older. Again, been more of a teacher and a minister than just a coach. Trying to be a life coach. I don't know exactly what advice I would give myself. You could ask for more balance in your life, but it's really hard because you take time away from your children, you take time away from your wife, because time is a love language. The more time you spend with God, the greater he feels. The more time you spend with your dad, the greater he feels. But the more time you spend with a player, the more time you spend with a child. And so there's only so many hours in a day. And I guess maybe would be just forgive yourself a little bit, for your failings, and thank God for God's grace, and try to believe that you're doing the best you possibly can, and be okay with that. That's good enough.
For sure. Well, Coach, I really appreciate, really happy for all the success that you've had at Auburn. Good luck this coming year, and until next time, War Eagle.
Jake, good to see you again, and War Eagle.